Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06. It's O'Connor and Company Monday morning, going crazy here at 7:35. Trevor Matich talk about the Commanders' domination over the Panthers. But what about our quarterback? Everyone knew this was going to happen. Jaden Daniels is the greatest quarterback in the world, rookie of the year. He's injured. We'll find out if he's going to be back for the next game against the Bears. 8:05. Maryland State Senator Justin Reedy. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Joining us now, as he always does at this time on this day, because that's how lucky we are, is Joe diGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Larry and Julie.
Joe, we got a lot to get to, but I want to start with this criminal leak from what is being investigated now, specifically from U.S. intelligence. It could theoretically have come from New Zealand, but right now, according to Axios, the investigation has to do with somebody within the U.S. intelligence community, specifically under the authority of the Biden administration, leaking Israel's war plans to Iran. How exactly does an investigation like this go forward? This is why, by the way, the counterintelligence investigation into Donald Trump's campaign, known as Crossfire Hurricane, which was a completely made-up, phony political investigation created by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC that James Comey took seriously for his own selfish political purposes to undermine Donald Trump. This is why so many of us covered that story, and we're angry about that story, Joe, because we need a good FBI that we can count on and rely on and trust to actually go after the bad guys in the counterintelligence world who are doing stuff like this. So how much faith should we have that they're going to get to the bottom of this, Joe?
Right.
Well, I don't know right now, because the problem is when you have officials at the top of these agencies like Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, whose bona fides are quite properly subject to question, you don't know how the agencies are functioning, and you don't know how much politics is influencing them, although it's fairly obvious that politics has infected every aspect of the FBI and the Department of Justice. So are they going to get to the bottom of this massive leak? This is a life-threatening leak. This isn't just a leak. There are people involved in the acquisition of this intelligence. Now, the source of the leak is the NSA, the National Security Agency, our signals intelligence, the best in the world, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Those are the satellite folks. Now, that information is so tightly held and so compacted, the classification on this document had to have been top secret, no foreign, which means no foreign distribution except for the people inside the cone of silence, which would be, if it was from New Zealand, that would be a strange leak for New Zealand. The Robert Malley case inside the administration, where we have the Iranian sympathizers in the government with connections to people in Iran as part of an initiative to put influencers in the U.S. government,
Yes.
Presents a unique opportunity for the FBI. What they're going to do is they have to find out everybody who had access to this document. This is a relatively simple thing to do, by the way. This isn't. And then you get everybody's electronic devices. You get all their emails. You get all their telephones. You seize their telephones immediately. And all of this has to be done. Now, the FBI is perfectly capable of doing this. The question is, what do they do with the information when they get it? What does the DOJ do, the National Security Division of the DOJ do are they going to be serious about it? What if they find out there's somebody who's in their cone of silence that they really like? You know, Malley, what's going on with Malley? Why has that taken so long? This is not a complicated issue. What's his status? Where is he? What's going on with that investigation? That raises the issue. Are they going to be serious about the investigation? And sad to say, that's an open question.
Joe, a quick follow-up on this because we have other things, but technically this undermines Israel, our ally, and endangers
the Espionage Act. Yeah, it's a violation of the Espionage Act.
Right. Would it be treason? Because since it doesn't directly affect, or does it? I mean, it directly affects. It does directly affect the United States national
It
security.
is treasonous activity in nature in the political sense, but it is not technically treason.
Okay.
It does not qualify as treason.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, I'm also concerned. I mean, this Ariana Tabatabai, she's the chief of staff of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, and she's also a naval officer, an officer in U.S. Naval Intelligence. She has access to all naval movements and all special forces operations in the world, and specifically in the Middle East. I mean, doesn't this also seem like the Department of Defense should be immediately acting on this to remove her from from getting this information? I mean, you mentioned her clearance, but I mean, it seems to me that she's putting U.S. soldiers at risk by having this information.
This is a very strange group of people in this White House and this Defense Department and in this CIA and this DOJ and this FBI. This is a very strange group of people.
Yeah.
It is difficult to say whether or not the old rules still apply. The question that you ask is perfectly legitimate. People like her usually have their security clearances suspended during times like this when there may be
out of an abundance of caution. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. It's not, this happens all the time. The issue, however, is why isn't it happening? What's going on with Mali? Why is there this air of noblesse oblige about this? There doesn't seem to be a serious concern about it. There haven't been a lot of follow-up stories about the leak, by the way. You haven't heard intelligence community people screaming and yelling. Now, one of the things that's true is there are a lot of anti-Semites in the intelligence community. I mean, you really don't know until you work with them to find them. I mean, the Arabists control everything, which, it's fine. If you want to have a prejudice and you want to lean toward the Arab states, that's perfectly fine. We need the Arab states and they need us. But the issue of how you treat our greatest ally in the Middle East who has nuclear weapons and who is there to defend us. And by the way, in case anybody hadn't noticed, we now have 3 different sets of ships in the Mediterranean defending Israel, and we're now going to man a new system on the ground with 100 U.S. soldiers. By the way, in case Congress hadn't noticed, we're at war. We're at war. We're shooting our missiles into Yemen, Syria, and Iran. I mean, we're at war, and you'd never know it because the people in Congress, because they must be consumed by the election, don't seem to understand that the United States, men and women of the American military are going to get killed eventually. And, of course, this is exactly what Joe Biden wants, nobody talking about the fact that we're at war and that he has created this monstrous situation in the Middle East requiring U.S. troops to be there. It's quite remarkable, the indifference of the American people to this and the American journalism.
Yeah.
No indifference over here, Joe, as you know. Quickly, billionaire David Sachs is one of those Democrats who's now supporting Trump, and part of it is because of regulation and lawfare. Listen to this from a podcast he was on, Cut 25 here, Michael.
There's going to be lawfare all over the place.
Absolutely. They're going to come for you.
Do you really think so, David?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I'm definitely not at the top of the list. Elon's at the top of the list, right?
Yeah,
so
he
has no choice but to go all in. They're already doing lawfare against him.
It's ridiculous.
But I think the point is just that if they're not defeated, they're going to keep doing it because there's no downside for it.
Fact check that for us, Joe. Are they wrong that it's going to be even more than we've already seen in terms of the lawfare against Trump? They're then going to go after people who have supported Trump in this election if they win?
Lawfare unchanged. What will happen is if she wins, the retribution against people in the technology industry, the censorship that will ensue is going to be mind-boggling. They will feel emboldened. They already feel emboldened because they have the media on their side. Think of the irony of it. The media, that the font of the First Amendment, all in on the cover-up of the silencing of people on the social media platforms by the FBI and the White House under Biden. It's an amazing story. This guy is very smart. He should be all in on this, and the rest of them should too. Thank God for Elon Musk.
Joe, can you stay with us? Because Howie Kurtz has a podcast, and he asked Trump specifically about this. Are you going to use law enforcement to seek retribution against your opponent? Which is, I'd love for you to comment on Trump's answer. I don't think anyone has heard this because, well, it's Howie Kurtz's podcast. So you're all going to hear it next. First at 7:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5. I'm sorry to Howie Kurtz. This is actually not his podcast. This is his weekend show, Media Buzz. It's taped on the set, or at least this interview is taped on the set that Fox Digital uses for a lot of their podcasts. That's why I thought it was a podcast. But here's Howie Kurtz. Listen to the remarkable question, by the way, from Howie in the first place, and then Trump's answer.
And my question is this. Are you prepared to say now that you will not use law enforcement to punish or prosecute your political opponents?
Excuse me. That's what they're using on me.
Okay, so your stance is that they started it.
Before you start this.
Yeah, I got it.
Howie, that's what they're using on me. I've got DAs. I've got everybody. They look at me. There's never been anything like this. The biggest case was the one down in Florida, and I beat it 100%. I won the case because we had number one, a brilliant judge, and a judge that moved rather rapidly, and I won the case. By the way, Biden had almost the same case, but he didn't have the Presidential Records Act because he wasn't the president, just to finish. And he got off on the basis that he's incompetent essentially that he's incompetent. And it was a strange ruling because they said, number one, he's incompetent, so he's not going to be, but the prosecutor actually said he's guilty, but he's incompetent. But they didn't say he couldn't be president anymore. That was his bigger problem for not being president. How can you not represent yourself in court because you're incompetent, but you're allowed to represent the United States of America? The whole thing is crazy. But no, they have weaponized government against me.
But are you willing to use the same tactics?
No, I don't want to do that because that's a bad thing for the country. I don't want to do that. I don't know who said. I haven't said that I would, but they have done it. I've got attorney generals.
All right, so he goes on, but that's sort of the crux of it. He said, I'm not looking to do that to them. It's really bad for the country. But he said they've set a bad precedent. If you could read, because you've been, you've operated with the president in the past, and you know what he's like. What do you think's going on here exactly? And how do you think this should play out should he win the election? Because I think you and I both agree that some people do deserve some investigation.
Well, there's no doubt that the president gave exactly the right answer. Should have, if it were me, I would have said, how dare you ask that question? How dare you ask me that question? Have you seen what's been happening to me since 2016? Do you know that I was indicted by the Justice Department in 2 different places? They used Democratic DAs all over the country to go after me, to try and destroy me. They tried to take me off the ballot in 16 states. Then the Supreme Court stopped them unanimously. The stupidity of that question. I remember Howie Kurtz when he weighed almost 300 pounds working for the Washington Times. I mean, this Washington Star. But I was a nice fat Jewish kid working for the Washington Star, and I was up on the Hill. Now he's a skinny guy, but he's not. He thinks he's smart because he has a show about the media on television. In fact, his show stinks, absolutely stinks. And that dumb question. That really dumb question shows how bad he is as a journalist. The question should have been to him, Mr. President, what steps are you going to take as President of the United States to ensure that the Justice Department weeds out the individuals who use the Justice Department to politicize law enforcement at the FBI and DOJ? Do you think it's necessary, Mr. President, for there to be a reorganization of the FBI and the Justice Department? I mean, there's some really great questions you could ask a potential president who's gone through what Donald Trump has gone through. But just let me just say again, Howie Kurtz's question was stupid, uninformed, dumb, and predictable.
Well, Joe, it seems to be the lawfare seems to be catching on, though. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro threatened Elon Musk over the weekend because Elon Musk has this new plan to give $1 million every day to people who register swing state voters. Let's listen to Cut 26 and get your reaction.
So you think it might not be legal, yes or no?
I think it's something that law enforcement could take a look at. I'm not the Attorney General anymore of Pennsylvania. I'm the governor, but it does raise some serious questions.
Yeah, it's a threat.
Really? Really? What are they? What are the serious questions? The way the dark money people in the Democratic Party throw money around, Mark Zuckerberg bribing local officials all over the United States through their election boards to take hundreds of millions of dollars to throw the election towards the Democratic candidate. Let me tell you something. The first person they should investigate after Donald Trump takes over is Josh Shapiro.
Yep.
Joe diGenova, I only lament that we'll only have 2 more chances to speak with you before Election Day, but they're going to be gold, as they always are. If anything, I know that our Monday ratings are through the roof when you join us. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
God save the Queen.
Whoever he is. It's 7:20.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:36, and things are heating up here in your Washington, D.C. area, not just heating up weather-wise, where we've got temperatures over 80 tomorrow, but also election-wise, politically, things are definitely heating up, and we're covering all the stories that you care about the way you expect us to cover it. Also coming up in just 30 minutes, Maryland State Senator Justin Reed is going to give us an update on that Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. This is a 70-mile power line that is going to run through northern Maryland. Again, not through Bethesda, not through Silver Spring, not through Tacoma Park. So we'll get to that. That's Julie Gunlock giggling at me for no apparent reason. And
Good morning.
I am Larry O'Connor. And let's get right to it. Because for the first time since 2018, your Washington football team, they were called the Redskins back then, they're off to a 5-2 start. But here's the thing about that 5-2 start. I remember it vividly because there I was at the Redskins game at home at the stadium. They called it FedEx back then. And the quarterback, Alex Smith, who was leading the team to that great 5-2 start, he got injured in that game against the Texans, and that was the end of that season. And Trevor Matich, I guess we got to start this conversation with an injury. As we were all holding our breath and dreading this moment, Jayden Daniels, in the middle of a great scramble and a great run, but apparently he got a pretty nasty injury to his ribs. He had to take himself out of the game. Do we have an update yet on this injury, Trevor?
Barry, we don't yet because they just haven't had time. The plan right now for the Commanders is to do all the tests today. So later this afternoon, they should have more information about Jayden Daniels' injury. It was interesting because you talked about Alex Smith's injury, and you knew right away that he was hurt severely and that he would be out indefinitely. And that's the way it was. This one, it's hard to see exactly where the injury was. They say it was a rib injury, but they didn't say whether it was a bone injury or a soft tissue injury. It didn't look like when he got hit on that long run that you mentioned that there was anything obvious that happened. But then after that, there were several plays where he would hold his hand up against his ribs like he was protecting it after the play. In other words, he just hurt. You just involuntarily put your hand up there where it hurts. And he did that a couple of times. And then after that, he went out. We'll see what happens. But for now, the best that we know is that his mom tweeted that he's going to be okay. And so that actually is encouraging.
Well, he's going to be okay, and he's going to start next game against the Bears. Are two very different things, Mom. But we'll have to just
hey now.
Well,
that said,
he can live over and hug her. She's fine with that.
There you go.
You're
exactly.
right. So those are two different things. Yeah.
That said, when you're playing the Panthers, who are probably the worst team in football, and when your defense is dominating, you can sort of withstand an injury to Jayden Daniels and make it through. And boy, did they make it through. And tell me about Marcus Mariota off the bench. He looked great.
Yes, he was phenomenal. They didn't miss a beat. It was almost like if you listened to it on the radio and didn't hear the name, you just ignored the name and you just heard the quality of the play, you wouldn't really have noticed that Jayden Daniels wasn't there. I mean, they scored on 7 of their 8 possessions. They only punted once. And, Mariota was most of that. Keep in mind that when he was at Oregon, he won the Heisman Trophy. Julie had brought that up just after the
Last week's Taylor Swift update.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, stop it.
After her Taylor Swift question, then she asked about the Heismans.
Yes, that was it. But it was good for her to point out that the backup quarterback for this team is also a Heisman Trophy winner. So you've got a lot of talent. Now, this was against the Carolina Panthers, and the best you can say about them is that they are largely abysmal. So this is not really a litmus test for the Commanders. But if you're going to have your starting quarterback go out and your backup play, that was a good one.
Well, and at the beginning of the season, Trevor, you said, listen, this team is a talented offense. They're going to score. They've got a great offensive plan. The concern is the defense. But, boy, since you said that, I think after Game 2 or Game 3, tell me, the defense absolutely dominated this game. Every week they're getting better and better.
They are getting better. And that's why, even though this is not a litmus test for them either, because of how awful the Panthers offense is, you see them coming together. And that's important because defense requires a lot of choreography. People need to be in the right spot. And if one guy is not in quite the right spot, there'll be a big hole to run through. And so they have been coming together with the scheme, learning each other. You know, they had a pick six. Dante Fowler had his first interception ever, which was super exciting. But also keep in mind, as I watched the Panthers play, they had a couple of problems. One is that they couldn't block anybody. And the other is that their scheme was just awful, and it didn't help them. I mean, this was as bad a performance by an NFL team as I've ever seen out of this offense.
Wow. And you've seen quite a few wearing burgundy and gold sometimes, for that matter. And I'll say this also, it's great. You know, there are some games that should be gimmies on the schedule. It's like, okay, we should win that game. But with Washington, it's never a gimme. And yes, sometimes they would win games like this, but they would barely win games like this, or maybe by, one touchdown. 40-7 is a statement to the rest of the league, especially coming off a loss, that they're for real and they take this seriously. And the team seems to be gelling.
They are, and that's a great point, because it used to be that Washington was the Carolina Panthers of the NFL, that even bad NFL teams would look to on the schedule and say, okay, this is where we can get right. We're playing the Commanders this week, and this is where we're going to win a game. And so that right there is a flip. Keep in mind that the Commanders are 5-2 right now, but also just to, 4 of the last 5 opponents had losing records. Baltimore was the only one with the winning record. 3 of the next 4 opponents are teams with winning records, starting with Chicago next week. They're 4-2. And so now all of a sudden they step up in class in terms of the quality of the teams that they're playing, but they use that runway of those teams that have mostly losing records early in the season to be able to get a 5-2 record and for everything to come together. I think this team is legit. They're not just a product of playing teams like the Carolina Panthers.
Well, and the back end of the schedule is loaded with NFC East opponents, and we've only seen the Giants so far, and we play them again on November 3rd. And then as we hit Thanksgiving and all through December, it's nothing but the Cowboys and Eagles, and it's going to be something else. It's fun. It's fun right now over at Northwest. It was a great atmosphere. Trevor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right, thanks, guys.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Julie, Gunlock, let's do a little theater of the mind radio stuff here, right? We got to paint the picture for everyone. The Border Patrol social media account put out a video of Hurricane Milton cleanup here. And I want you to picture, first of all, here's the sound. Let's get a little ambiance going. Here's the sound. Yeah. There's some chainsaws working, baby. They got to get rid of all these downed trees and all the debris, right? So they got these chainsaws going on this thing, and then they zoom out and they show this line of 14 Border Patrol agents. Are they on the border? Are they protecting? They're not. They are not on the border. Technically, Florida is a border state, and they're part of DHS, so I'm sure that they were brought in to help all hands on deck here. So here's Border Patrol, 14 of them. They're all lined up shoulder to shoulder. And they are doing, it's like a bucket brigade, in the old days with a fire problem, but they're moving logs. What appear to be, these are logs that I would pile 5 or 6 of them onto my arms and carry them to my fire pit and have them, and they're using this bucket brigade thing, 14 of them, to move a log from a house to the curb and put it on a pile of debris. And I don't know who's running the social media accounts here, Julie, but This does not instill the sense of the government is efficiently taking care of this problem the way I think they thought it would. It looks like it looks like it looks like government inefficiency. It's the perfect picture of government inefficiency.
It absolutely is, and I have a feeling the person who put this clip out is the one who put that first clip of Kamala doing the CBS morning or the 60 Minutes video, and then they're like, "Oopsie, we shouldn't have done this." I mean, who's running the show over there? Because this is, like you said, 14 burly federal employees moving a log that I would have no trouble moving, by the way. This isn't like, it's not like they were moving like an entire tree. It is one small log, and it takes a long time to get to this pile that they're adding to.
It's 20 seconds to follow the log from person number one, which is, again, at the house to the curb. And I could walk it myself and do it. And I understand that this is supposed to keep them fresh, but you would think that you could disperse this number of employees to sort of handle problems elsewhere as well.
14 federal employees used to move one log is the perfect example of government inefficiency. There you go.
Meanwhile, you know how politicians like Joe Biden always said, oh, yeah, we're going to protect the border. But a lot of it, because of the terrain, we don't need to build a fence. We'll just have surveillance. We'll have cameras and drones, and that'll take care of it. Well, listen to this. Fox host Griff Jenkins with Matthew Hudak, former Border Patrol official, cut 40 here. Apparently, all that high tech to protect the border, they can't afford to keep the cameras working. Listen.
Is a majority of the RVSS towers, these remote video surveillance towers that help the agents see what's coming across our border, are inoperable. Let's start with you, Chief. What can you tell us about this, and what's your reaction?
Well, Griff, thanks for having me on. And in the cameras, our agents do tremendous work each and every day, and these camera systems are a vital tool that they use to help do that job safely and effectively. And, across the southwest border, we have over 500 of what are these legacy RVSS remote video surveillance systems. And we had used a contract with the Federal Aviation Administration to do the maintenance of those, and it's just become apparent over the last year plus that it is just not working. So this is not a new problem, but it continues to get worse. And ultimately, the solution really comes down to a substantial enough funding allotment.
That's good. So they don't have the funding to fix the cameras to help secure the border, and they sent 14 Border Patrol agents to the hurricane relief to move a log or however many logs shoulder to shoulder. But I do have, just to button this up, announced last week a new $2.4 billion aid package for Ukraine.
Of course.
So they got that going for them.
We're in great shape. Everything's
Move
fine.
that log. 754.